Today we're going to be making minestrone soup. This recipe makes a very large batch of 1 gallon of soup, so please adjust according to your needs. So for the soup, we're going to use a variety of ingredients, which are going to revolve around using different vegetables. We're going to begin with our zucchini. We're going to cut our zucchini in half, in quarters, and then we're going to slice. This is a great recipe to practice your knife skills. Then we'll use 1 small yellow squash. And again, we'll cut into equal sized pieces. And then we'll set aside. Prior to the start of this video, I had cleaned all of my vegetables in advance. Now we're going to take our celery stalks, we're going to cut them down into strips, and then slice them into small dice. You can adjust any type of vegetable that you're using for this recipe based on what you like. Our next ingredient is going to be a large loose carrot. I like to buy these large loose carrots because they're easier to cut because of the size of them. So I'm going to work on doing a small dice here as well. And I'm just going to slice them into strips, strips, and then cross cut into small dice. Move them over to my pan here. Now I'll move on to my onion, and we've seen a demo on this many times, so we're going to cut the top off, and then we're going to cut it down lengthwise through the root. Make sure we peel and get all of the skins off, and then clean our cutting board. Cut horizontal strips, vertical strips, and cross cuts to get your small dice. Always making sure to keep your fingers tucked and your knife held gripped properly. Now we're going to take our green beans. We're just going to very carefully trim just a little bit off the top and the bottom, each side. And then we'll take our trimmed green beans and we'll cut them into, depending on the size, either into half or into thirds. I think here we cut into thirds. Just smaller bite-sized pieces for our soup. So there we have our cut vegetables. Our last item to cut is going to be our garlic. So we want to take that and we want to mince this. You can use as much or as little garlic as you like. Again, all of these ingredients can be adjusted or interchanged for other types of vegetables as you see fit. We're going to mince that garlic, and then we'll set that up in a small container, and then we're going to move to the stove with our vegetables. So now we're going to start on a nice medium to high flame. We'll put some oil in the bottom of our pan, and then we're going to start with our crunchiest or hardest vegetables. So we're going to start with our carrots and our celery first. So we're going to get that into the pan, and we're going to begin to saute it. Now I don't want to add everything into the pan at once because it would then become overcrowded and it would just kind of steam and not really get a little bit of color. We're looking just for a little bit of color, cooking it through. After a few minutes, then we can go ahead and add in our onions. And then what we're going to do with our zucchini is, because I like to get a little bit of brown on them, I'm going to put a little bit of salt and pepper and a little bit of olive oil and use some of my seasonings for the soup. I'm going to put them on top, and then I'm going to get this into the oven and roast it at a high temperature so that I can get a little bit of browning on my zucchini. So that's going to go into the oven at about 400 degrees until golden brown. So now we'll continue with the rest of our soup here. We want to make sure that as we are sauteing our vegetables that we do stir them frequently, keep any spots from burning. And once they've cooked for about 5 minutes and softened up, the next step we're going to add in the next part of our ingredients. So we'll start right now and add in our garlic, cook that very briefly, and then add in our green beans. Now we're going to do dried oregano, dried parsley, salt, pepper, and dried basil will be the seasonings that we're going to add in. So we'll add them in and then we'll stir, make sure not to burn them, so move kind of quickly. And then once they've kind of softened and gotten a little bit of fragrance, we're going to add our diced tomatoes and then also our crushed tomatoes or a tomato puree. So you can see this has lots of vegetables, lots of vitamins, fiber. This is really a very healthy dish to make. So next we're going to add in a little bit of our stock. Now I had chicken stock, but certainly if you want to keep this a vegetarian-based meal, you would use vegetable stock. You just want to avoid using straight water because it won't have enough flavor. So now I just added in the ditalini pasta. So here's our ditalini pasta. You can use any small pasta, something that's quick cooking, about maybe 5 to 6 minutes. It's going to absorb some of the liquid and cook right into our soup. So of course, as we're cooking, we want to simmer and really develop those flavors. You can taste and season throughout. Really see how it starts to get nice and thick now that it's cooked a few minutes with the pasta in there. So we're just going to take a nice clean spoon and give it a little taste. We want to make sure we have the right amount of seasonings in there. More often than not, we usually touch it with a little bit more salt and pepper. So it's really up to your taste. Now, if you're trying to eat super healthy, you want to be really mindful of the sodium that you're adding. So now we're also going to add in our cannellini beans. So this is any type of a bean. I like the white beans because they kind of stand out a little bit in the soup, but it's really anything you have around the house is fine. I like to use canned beans because they're already cooked and ready to go. I just rinse them prior to adding them into any dish, and that removes a lot of that sodium that they're packed inside of. And now we're going to take out our zucchini, which is nicely cooked, a little bit brown, and we're going to add that into our recipe. And pretty much our soup is done. So, you can adjust it again with a little more stock if it's too thick or you want to get a little bit more liquid into your soup. If you're happy with the way it is, you want to just taste each of the vegetables and taste the pasta and make sure that it is cooked all the way through. Pretty much once everything is nice and tender, you are ready to serve your minestrone soup. Minestrone soup can be served. I like to throw some croutons on top, as well as maybe some cheese. Is a really nice addition. You can keep it super healthy and avoid those items. You can keep it completely vegetarian and just use a vegetarian stock or a veg stock. That's really up to you. So I'm going to add just a little bit more chicken stock. Again, that was what I had in the house. A light flavored stock. I'm going to add that in just to make sure I have enough liquid to garnish ratio, and just a little more pinch of salt. It is a large pot of soup, so it does look like I'm using a lot of salt, but it is a gallon of soup. A little more pepper. I always like fresh crushed pepper in my soup. I just think it gives like a nice sharp flavor. And that's pretty much it. We're just going to stir that up one last time. Make sure everything is nice and tender. So from start to finish, all these vegetables will be nice and tender. The longest amount of time is going to take to chopping your vegetables. It'll probably take longer to chop them than it will to cook the soup. So figure in about an hour or so, you can have a nice fresh pot of minestrone soup on the table for your family. This is great, again, to practice all of your knife skills. It's great to use up when you have lots of vegetables in the house and you don't know exactly what to do with them. Throw them all into a pot of soup, grab a couple cans of tomatoes, and you have a delicious, healthy, hearty soup. So here we are. We're just going to serve it up. Make sure you always have a good portion of liquid to the actual vegetables and the filling. And then again, like I said, I like to add a little bit of cheese and some croutons just for some additional flavor. Enjoy!